Okay, so in this video, we're going to be addressing one of the comments that was left by one of the viewers on the channel. And the video that the comment was left on was where I showed how to make reusable widgets in Flutter to save on code and to simplify everything and so on and so forth. And I made briefly a point of how I personally like to use functions over widgets when making the reusable widgets. And Randall basically said here, smarter people than me disagree with you about methods versus separate classes. And then the problem is rebuild boundaries, so on and so on. And first of all, shout out to Randall because he triggered this research that I did, which allowed me to make this video. And he links to an article titled Splitting Widgets to Methods is an Anti-Pattern. And here the person that wrote this article basically details on how they gave advice to split into methods, but now 6 months later they disagree with that. So let's go over a couple of points here. They say the problem with splitting widgets into methods, and the problem here, the main problem that they are describing here is rebuilding for nothing. They says in this case there's no reason to rebuild that particular widget tree. The widget tree that this person is referring to is this build nonsense widget, and that build nonsense widget is this random widget which just displays some static content. Let's see if I can find the exact code snippet. But yeah, this is some random nonsense widget that displays some random static content. And every time state is being changed in the widget, that widget also gets rebuilt. And the way that you would solve that if you had a class widget instead of a function widget is you would put const before this widget as to mark it as a widget that only needs to be built one time. So let's go down and see what they're doing here. So let's actually look at the code example. So yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. So nonsense widget displays some static content that never changes and is not dependent upon the state of this widget. And then you can put a const before it and make a const constructor, and this widget will only be built one time. And with a function widget, you just cannot do this. It's impossible because you cannot have a const constructor. So that's basically the whole point here. They're both Randall and the person that wrote this article, I don't know the name of. So it's Cicero. They both say that, or actually no, this is a comment from somebody. Whatever. So they say that if we use a function widget and we're displaying some content that only needs to be built one time, we're basically wasting resources because that's being redrawn all the time and it doesn't have to be, which is a very valid point. So now I'm going to demonstrate this with this example app. So here we have the pretty much the empty Flutter app, the one you create with the counter and the plus. I'm sure you've seen this like a million times by now. So when we take a look at it, yeah, it's just that, the counter app. So now let me kind of try to demonstrate what Randall and the person that wrote the article are saying. So I'm now going to take this. You have pushed the button this many times text and extract it into a function widget first. So I'm going to cut this and call the method description. And now I'm going to make that method over here. And I'm going to paste the widget. Also, I'm going to return it. Put a semicolon at the end. And save, and the app is going to get reloaded. Okay, so nothing changes. The app works exactly as it did. There are no visible changes. So now I'm going to put a little print statement over here that's basically going to be printed out every time the description widget gets built. So let's say print description is getting rebuilt. So then I can save this, go back. Actually, first I'm going to open up the logs, the console, so we can see all of the Flutter print statements. And now I'm going to press the plus button. And yeah, it's rebuilding the description widget. And when I press it again, the same thing happens, and it's always getting rebuilt even though it doesn't have to. So this is, you have pushed the button this many times and it's always getting re-rendered, re-rendered, re-rendered for no reason. The reason this is getting rebuilt is because the way Flutter works, if we have a stateful widget, for example, anytime some state changes using the set state function, this entire widget tree gets rebuilt. So the app bar gets built, the center column, everything here gets rebuilt, and also the description gets rebuilt. Even though it's static content, Flutter doesn't care about it. It just rebuilds everything so it can display the new state. It doesn't matter where the state is at. It doesn't even matter if it's not used in the widget. So if I here say static content, it doesn't matter. Every time this set state function gets called, all of this is going to be redrawn and re-rendered. And of course, for some widget that makes absolute sense. Text needs to get rebuilt so it will display the new counter state, because it's changing. When I say plus, set state gets called and it redraws this texting so it can display the new count. It makes perfect sense. But for description, in this case, it really doesn't make any sense. And since this is the kind of discussion of functions versus classes, maybe the first thought in your mind would be, okay, then let's just move this description thing to a class widget. So I'm going to say stateless, call it description, and return the exact same thing. And also I'm going to print out description.build, and I'm going to use that widget over here. And I'm going to save this. It's going to reload. We can go back into Flutter home demo page, clear the log, open this, go to the app. And now when I click plus, it's getting built. When I click plus again, it's getting built again. And yeah, you get the point. It's still getting rebuilt, even though we changed it to a class. But one thing we can do about this is, if this is static content and doesn't need to change when we mutate the state, we can just put const in front of the description. And in the description, we need to make a const constructor. So let's say const. And now I'm going to open up the logs, clear them, save the app, restart the app. And if you see here, the description was built, but that was on the initial load of the app. And now when I say plus, and as many times as I say it, this thing is not getting rebuilt because there is no reason for it. It doesn't depend on any state. So that's basically the whole point that's being made here. If we were to do this with a function, it would just not be possible. So let me just try to give you a simple example. So let's go back and create a function, call it test, and make it return a container. Doesn't matter. And we can then just try to use this test here. It's always going to get rebuilt, so on and so forth. And if I put const in front of it, it just won't work, because in order to use const, it can only be used on a class that has a const constructor. And that's why people are saying that the functions are quote unquote bad. So that is the whole point against this. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole point. When you want to display static content and do not want to redraw unnecessarily, use classes always. But we can also do this with, for example, we have a text widget now, right? And we do not have to split it into anything, and we can just do this. We can use const, text, so on and so forth. So the point of this video is kind of to emphasize this whole thinking of use const whenever you can, whenever anything doesn't depend on the state. Just use it so you do not have unnecessary redraws. Because if you, for example, if you have a pretty complex app running on a simple device, this can actually cause performance issues. Like in a simple case like this, it really doesn't matter. But you should try to minimize this as much as you can, just so you do not have those unnecessary problems in some edge case. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I also hope you managed to learn something from it. And again, shout out to Randall for commenting here, and also shout out to the person that wrote this article. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you next time.